Good afternoon. I met Dr. Ben Carson back in the late 80s or early 90s. I remember it distinctly because he was the keynote speaker at a fundraising dinner that I attended. Dr. Carson was there, and I'll tell you, the testimony talk he gave that night about his coming to Christ was, at that time, the most powerful testimony talk I had ever heard. He came onto the political scene in 2013 after the National Prayer Breakfast, where he commented negatively on Obamacare, and the president was in the audience. And immediately after that, many people thought he'd become the Republican presidential hopeful. But he's run into a real problem right now, and it's a problem not just for him. It's a problem for conservative politics in America in general. It has to do, as might be expected, with how to handle homosexual issues, in this case, homosexual attraction. Take a listen to what happened when he was on CNN with Chris Cuomo.
Same-sex marriage. You have equal protection. It's working its way through the courts. The decisions are getting more and more uniform. But then you have people of faith who say marriage is ours. God says it is a man and a woman. The Bible says, my faith says. Which one wins with Dr. Carson?
I would do what the Constitution says. Constitution says civil issues of that nature should be determined at the state level.
What if people of a state vote for a law 100-0 that winds up infringing on the rights of a minority, like happened very often with slavery, like many would argue is happening now with people who are gay?
You can't just say because it happened that way this time, this is the same situation. It's not the same situation.
Why not?
Because people have no control over their race, for instance.
You think they have control over their sexuality?
Absolutely.
You think being gay is a choice?
Absolutely.
Why do you say that?
Because a lot of people who go into prison straight, and when they come out, they're gay. So did something happen while they were in there?
Most
Ask yourself
gay
that question.
Never go to prison, and you know there's a whole theory of dominance.
Wait a minute. I said a lot of people who go in, come out. Are you denying that that's true?
There's much there. The only thing I want to comment on is the feeble attempt to try to explain homosexuality as a choice. This is where politics and psychology and even pastoral work came into great conflict within American conservatism. It was important to those in politics to try to say that homosexuality is a choice. It was hoped that this way they could avoid it becoming used as a kind of immutable characteristic that had to be dealt with as we dealt with skin pigmentation and race. But he made another mistake. Instead of acknowledging that this was a clumsy moment, he went on Sean Hannity and blamed the liberal media. Listen to this.
I noticed you were asked a question, and this one happened to be about gay rights. Why don't you explain what you said?
Yeah, first of all, it was a 25-minute interview. They chopped, and you see what part they emphasized. We talked about some really important things. None of that was brought out. But I did learn something very important. For certain networks, never do a pre-taped interview. Always do it live.
So then
they
cut it up and they slice and dice, and it's not in its proper context. They put this part in, but not that part in.
So we have Dr. Carson there blaming the liberal media, allowing Hannity's description of the media slicing and dicing the interview to stand. In fact, that wasn't sliced and diced. It may have been overemphasized in the subsequent reports, but it wasn't. He was not abused. We know exactly what he said, and he stumbled badly. This is a problem that's conservative politics is having a huge problem these days, and it can't get away with just blaming the liberal media. That's what makes this such a difficult topic to deal with. The morality of it in the Catholic Church is clear. Homosexual acts are mortal sin. It's another form of abuse of our sexual faculties. Dr. Carson's witness as a Christian has been hampered by this misstep because running for politics, he ended up speaking in sound bites, and it was a bad one. The fact of the matter, when we began fighting same-sex so-called marriage, it was already well known that homosexuality was not a choice. That was ignored by political consultants. The Catholic Church, in its approach to this, has never said homosexual attraction is a choice. Behavior is a choice, but not attraction. And again, if Catholics had been more forceful in helping to advise in this area of politics, Ben Carson would not have fallen into this mistake, and political conservatism would be a lot more mature in the way it handles these matters.